Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the YouTube channel for Peacefully Wired. My name is Matt, aka Peacefully Wired. This is my second attempt at this video. The first one, I was really on a roll, and my wife came in and told me that I was using some language that is not favorable to the YouTube bot or algorithm. So I'm doing this one over. I'm doing my series going back and forth between ROCD and HOCD, and this is going to be about ROCD fears of not being good in bed, not being a satisfactory lover. Before I go on, please like, subscribe, comment. Tell me what you think about the content. Is there some type of video you would like me to make, or some type of topic that you would want me to discuss? Okay, so fear of not being a good lover, right? Not satisfying your partner. I struggled with this. In Whether it be in a relationship, a long-term relationship, or it just be a one-time encounter or some type of fling, I always had to be the the best that this person ever had, right? And a lot of this stuff is due to just like societal pressures, right? I mean, you see it in movies, you see it, you hear it in lyrics and music and um, novels, whatever you want to see or whatever you're looking at. You see a lot of importance is put on sex and um, the ability to have a healthy sex life. Sorry, healthy intimacy life. Okay, have a healthy intimacy with your partner or intimacy with anybody. It's very important that you both have an O, right? It's very important that you're able to, as a man, make your woman have an O. Okay, and so a lot of pressure is put on that. If you're not a man that can give a woman, bring a woman to a peak, then that says a lot about your abilities, and that's actually incorrect because there's a lot of women actually that can't achieve an O. I have been I've been with women that I was with one who was in her 40s that had never had an O in her life, and I did the best I could. Didn't happen. Didn't really have anything to do with me. If it did, then all the other partners that she'd ever been with obviously would have been able to achieve that. And there was something going on with that person. And I think if you talk to a lot of people that are in long-term relationships, right, when you've been together with somebody for a long period of time, the excitement wanes, right? Your bodies change. It's the familiarity is there, and the encounter is not as exciting as it once was. And you probably hear it's a little bit easier for men, right, to achieve but for women, not as easy. And I think you'll find that a lot of women that are in monogamous relationships for a long period of time would tell you when they do have intimacy with their partner, O is not achieved on a regular basis, and that's why women have other things that they use, right? Whether it be aside from their partner or with their partner. Um, but the fear there of not being good is something I dealt with a lot, and ultimately it's just the fear of rejection, the fear of getting taunted by peers. We were talking to so and so, and she told us, you were lame and in bed, and having that feeling of obviously being rejected and being made fun of, not a good feeling. But again, like so much pressure is put on both parties, right? To have relationships where the the intimacy is always good. It's never bad, right? Which is another irrational thing. There's so many dynamics that go into intimacy with somebody else. It's not always going to be like the first time. It's not always going to be great. Sometimes it's just mundane, and you're just going through the motions. I mean, you talk to people that are married, and you hear them say things like, "So many things go through my mind when I'm having intercourse or intimacy with my partner." I start thinking about what I got to do tomorrow. The kids, right? Their career, all these different types of things. So it's not always this you know perfect coming together. You see it a lot in movies, and you see it in TV and music and lyrics and stuff like that, where this idea and you see it a lot in adult content, right? Where the men are just endowed, and the women are their bodies are perfect, and it looks like they're just having this most wonderful time, and it's just all depicted. It's all nonsense at the end of the day, right? So, it's important to have a physical connection with your partner, but it's not always the end all be all. And sometimes people are in partnerships where um, there can't really be a full on physical encounter, because you could have someone who's a paraplegic, right? They're paralyzed from the waist down, so there's no feeling there. Okay, you could have someone who's a quadriplegic. You could have someone you could have a woman who has issues. You could have a man who has issues, right? You could have all sorts of things that go on medically that would stop that. But if someone has a really good connection and a relationship with someone outside of a physical activity, that you can still have a really content relationship, right? And so, I mean, I've heard, my wife has told me about friends that she's had where, the couple had intimacy multiple times a week, maybe multiple times a day, and they would brag about it, and they would, tell this to people, and then, those that couple ended up getting divorced. So just because they had, intimacy all the time didn't necessarily mean that their relationship was really strong. That's another thing I used to think, like, if I'm really good at intimacy, I'm really struggling not to say the words I want to say, by the way. Okay. I really want to just talk openly. I don't, what it is, but I'm struggling not to say the words I want to say. I'm a real person. I like to talk and use the language that there is out there, but whatever. So, uh, um, now I totally lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? So the couple, yeah. So when I would believe that, you know, if I'm good at intimacy, then that means that person will never leave, and that's just, again, unrealistic, right? There are plenty of people that have relationships where you talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, the intimacy is so great, but we fight all the time. That's not sustainable, right? At a certain point, one or the other is going to be like, hey, and you hear people talk about it like, oh, I'm super attracted to that person, we had this relationship, but we can't be in a relationship together. No matter how good the intimacy is, it does not always equal a good relationship. Okay. Or what, and we can go back to like what a good or bad relationship is, but I guess a healthy relationship, right? So um, I had somebody who was contacting me that was dealing with some ROCD, some retroactive jealousy, and it was really affecting him in the bedroom, so much so that he had to get medication, because this started getting into his head, his beliefs about how important having intimacy was, and his ability to not perform, and then starting to worry, like, my wife might now leave me if we can't have intimacy on a regular basis, right? So they're having it, he was bragging, or basically telling me, we're having it like 5 times a week and it's always good and this and that. It's like, okay, well, have you told your wife that you have this going on? Oh, no, I couldn't tell my wife that. She'd probably leave me. I'm like, well, so first and foremost, do you think your wife would leave you if you couldn't continue to have intimacy with her on a regular basis? Red flag, in my opinion. And you think that your wife would leave you if you told her that you had a brain disorder that you were born with, that there's nothing you can do about except try to get some help? Another red flag. I'm sorry, that's not a strong relationship to me. And I can even draw an example with my wife and I. Like, we used to have intimacy quite a bit, and even though we had good intimacy, right? You know, some of the best intimacy I've ever had, and even though during that time, like, I was going through HOCD, so there was a little bit of a loss in connection on my part. There was times when there was trust issues because I was lying a lot about different things, and so even though we had that going for us, there was a disconnect to where our relationship almost ended, and it wasn't had nothing to do with the physical intimacy. Could have been top notch, but if there's other issues going on, that's not going to keep a relationship together. So at the core, it's really the fear of rejection. It's the belief that having to be the best partner means that you're always going to be able to keep somebody, and then you put all this energy into needing to be that partner, and you overthink it, and you get into, like, you can get into weird stuffs where your interests and your need to, like, spice things up or do things differently, and can go to other levels. Like, there's nothing wrong with introducing new things and spicing things up in a relationship, but you can take that to other levels, and it can also get into your head to where you start to believe that if you can't perform on a regular basis and that you're not a good lover and you're not satisfying your partner, that ultimately that means that you're going to lose your partner. And you know, I mean, there's lots of marriages that end that have nothing to do um, with intimacy, right? There are 60% of marriages end in divorce, right? That's 6 out of 10. A lot of the times, it has nothing to do with physical, right? And a lot of times, the other fear would be like, if I'm not a good partner, intimate physically wise, and that means that my partner's going to find something elsewhere. And again, you can go back to people that are with, people that can't have intimacy. If you're paralyzed, right? I'm not talking about like there's other intimacy obviously that you could do, but like full on, the whole deal. Like there are people that can't have that, and they're in relationships, and just because that can't exist does not mean that the relationship ends, right? So a lot of the fears just a fear of rejection, fear of losing the partner. I'm not a good enough lover. That means then um, I'm not a good enough lover. Then that means that my phone's ringing right now. I don't know if it's vibrating on the video, but if I'm not a good lover, that means the relationship can't exist, or I will never be able to have or keep a partner. And that's just there's so many things that you can break that down and show that that's actually not the case. I had another example I wanted to use. I'm getting distracted all over the place with this video, but again, like just don't put so much pressure on yourself. Relationships, relationships are about more than just physical. That's one part of it. If you have a good physical relationship with your partner, that's awesome. It's a bonus, but it doesn't mean that you're in the wrong relationship, or that you're not a good enough partner just because maybe you're not good. Or we can go into. I think I'm going to do another one about like men's size. We could probably just talk about it on this one. Like there's a size thing for guys, right? Where there's a lot of pressure or kind of idea put on that a man has to be well endowed to satisfy a woman, and I've heard nothing but the contrary. A lot of women uh, do not like extremely large male members, and actually a lot of them prefer them to be around the average size, right? So, but I was going to make an example. Like my wife and I, like I said, used to have a lot of intimacy. Relationship was good, but not as strong. But we haven't been as intimate. But there's a lot of other things that have changed in our relationship. Trust has been built because of my recovery. Like we've been able to build an even stronger relationship. She's my best friend, and so the relationship is actually probably better than it's ever been. And it's the physicalness isn't as consistent as it used to be, which is for me, fine. I think for both of us, maybe we might prefer something different, but doesn't mean it's the end of the world for our relationship. And I think I was talking about like divorces that we have in the United States are very high, and you see a lot of percentages and studies that show that people that are in arranged marriages are actually happier. And these aren't people that are choosing their partner; it has nothing to do with their physical attraction. They didn't go out and find this person and court them. It's just something that they were put into, and those things actually end up lasting longer. Now, it doesn't mean like through that something can't be built, and there's can be attraction and passion and stuff like that can come out of that. But it's just going back to like just breaking down like the belief that if the relationship isn't always physical, we're not always doing intimate things, and somehow that means it's not the right relationship because it doesn't reflect what you see, as being the right relationship, whether whatever social media you're watching, television, movies, whatever. Like it doesn't mean that. Right? There's a lot of things in a relationship that can exist outside of physical contact that can make a relationship really strong. And so, again, it's just like don't put so much pressure on yourself. It can become super compulsive to think you always have to be this person performing, whether that means you start getting into taking pills, you're trying to, look up all the things, all the ways to please somebody and all that kind of stuff. Like at the end of the day, like it really should just happen naturally. I mean, it's not a bad thing to know how to, do certain techniques and satisfy somebody. But at the end of the day, like it should be a natural thing, shouldn't be something you put too much thought into. And definitely if you have a belief that being, good in bed equals good relationship or means no one's ever going to leave you or no one's ever going to cheat on you. It's just ridiculous. People cheat for all sorts of reasons. It doesn't necessarily, people cheat on people that they're having good sexual relationships or intimacy, like intimate relationships with, right? And there are people that go around and have intimacy with many different people and have good intimacy. So if good intimacy equaled a relationship, then there would be no people that effectively had multiple and different partners. Okay, so sometimes just good intimacy is good intimacy. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about a couple or a person in general, right? It's just an act between two people. It doesn't have anything to do with who you are. So I hope you got some value out of this video. Like I said, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about this and what kind of content you would like me to talk about. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching, peacefullywired@gmail.com. And I'm ready to help you recover from OCD. All right. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.